Sweet. Everybody there? We are live. But if you are talking, I can't hear you. That's a problem.
Can you hear me now?
I'm back.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Check, check. We got everybody? Check, check. Okay, that's back. Wow. That like broke everything.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Sweet.
Nope.
Okay, we're streaming. Let's do this. Welcome back, party people, for another DAOhaus Haus Party. This week we don't have a guest, so it's really just a team. HausDAO hang, community hang, partially to make time for, open conversations around, stuff that's come up. I thought a good place to start that we haven't really gotten into in a little while is just breaking down, some of the strange terminology we use in the context of just talking to other people about DAOhaus. Some of it rage quit, transmutation, but then also just aspects of like, trying to bring people in to work on community stuff. There's a lot of like, we have to explain what the camps are. We have to explain how the proposal process works. Like it's all future work stuff in a really interesting way. So
yeah, we have our own language, basically.
Yeah, for sure. But first, where'd it go? Why didn't that? Oh no, there's another thing broken. There we go. Okay. Updates at all from the teams? Can you show off any of that kind of like in production stuff that's super half baked yet, or is that too half baked?
Yeah, I don't know if we need to show it, but we've got some good progress going there. Scott and Sam are killing it, starting to implement the front end. Everything's coming together. They've done some really nice work getting the code a little more logical, I guess, like how the scaffolding is set up. So it'll make it easier going forward to iterate, bring on new contributors, things like that. But it's coming along and it's starting to look pretty good. It's starting to look like something. So that's good.
Yeah, it's a funny piece of software design that I don't think people you don't understand unless you've gone and made an app. There's this part where you get this beautiful thing that you design, you have to go build it, and it's very much like putting a building together or something. There's these scaffolding pieces, and then you can kind of see the framework, and then the thing moves to the other place, and then the other thing gets fixed, and suddenly you go, oh, there it is. But it's still like, it takes that time.
Yeah, it's a lot like building a building or something. You're initially going to have your 3D renders that look really cool, and that gets the project green lighted, and then you kind of get the blueprints, and then you got to build out the big metal frame.
You're saying the house analogy is apt.
Yeah,
perhaps that's why we've chosen it. Word. Yeah, paladins and alchemists. Anything to say on the alchemist side in terms of house token? Anything happening there? We're starting to have our first community members who will take part in the without being members, will be doing the transmutation thing and thus earning house, which is an interesting first proof of contribution, sort of bringing in new people. Part of the question there, I guess, is what does it look like to, how does one get house, I guess. We don't know yet. Playing with it.
Yeah, through the contributions initially, and some other mechanics coming soon. But yeah, that's coming along too, and I think we're about done with our design discussions there on tokenomics and distribution things, and so everything should be launched around the same time we're shooting for.
And on the comms front, we're working on cool ways for people to interact with it. In part, I don't know. You tell us what's cool. Hackathons, bounties, something we haven't invented yet. I don't know. We are also still trying to grow the community team. So, get in our Discord. Talk to me if you are interested in what it looks like to build out. We've found we're at an interesting place. There's a lot of demand for community, people with this sort of community management, community growth, community experience, whatever you want to call it, skill set. I think DAOhaus overlaps with that in an interesting way. So might be doing an apprentice program or something as well. I think that could be pretty cool. It's partially stealing from Raid Guild, which, we've talked about here before. So
yeah, we're also kind of in that weird place where, when you brought this up last week, I think we're reskinning the entire front end. So documentation, doing visuals around documentation, like videos and screenshots, is not quite ready, because we want those to be synced, but we can kind of start on getting things like that going. And that's a really good thing for first issue for contributors, if they want to come in and learn the product and do some help for us, is going to be our wiki and our videos and tutorials and stuff.
It's very much like building a community for people who want to build communities. It's like optimal dog food. So that's Rangers. Otherwise, that's project updates. Yeah, I thought from here, just kind of open conversation. I mean, if anyone on the call just has questions, we can start there. Otherwise, I kind of have an idea for ways to talk through kind of what's going on with DAOhaus. DAOs,
yeah.
The land of DAOs. Do we need to start all the way back at what's a DAO?
Probably. If we're going to go through the whole lexicon.
On my other podcast, this is what we call like cave paintings. Like, let's take it way back to the TLDR. You need to get caught up with what the hell is going on here. You want to take a crack at what's a DAO?
Sure, and I mean, maybe it's a little history too, right?
For sure.
I was talking to someone the other day who's pretty heavy into the crypto space, but the DAO, the thing that you hear about from all the people talking about Ethereum and its early days and having this rollback and its immutability, and so like some people don't even really know what the DAO was, and so this is really early days. Like, it's ETH is now in its like kind of phase where people have heard about it, and I think it's $7 a token, maybe even a little less. And the first kind of killer app that came out, the first like use case that went viral, like we've had several of these now since then with NFTs and CryptoKitties and the DeFi stuff recently, and different things along the way. But this was like the first one that everyone was like, this is the use case. And it was basically, so it was called the DAO. It was basically a way to kind of, it was like what these venture kind of DAO things do now. So like Metacartel Ventures. It was basically unpermissioned way for everyone to pitch in and have some kind of like an index fund around a bunch of different projects that were being built by then builders in the ecosystem. So it's kind of a use case that has now been fleshed out and is being used in a lot of different ways. But this was totally new back then and was really cool. And so everyone was trying to get into it.
Was anyone here in the DAO? Were you, Deacon?
No, I didn't buy into it. I was around during it. And
yeah.
But Scott, were you?
Yeah. That was a very lofty goal, lofty dream.
Yeah. Like there was a couple different products which were kind of like their spear. They were, I guess, their flagships or whatever, which none of them turned out, and kind of silly sometimes thinking back on them. But one of them was Slockit, right? Which was like a lock that could be unlocked with your keys, your Ethereum keys, which is still a cool idea, but
that name's a little rough.
Yeah. Yeah, if you had to pay $5 to unlock your lock every time and wait for a pending transaction to go through.
I missed I was in law school while all of that was happening, and I finished and was like, hey, I have time to do other things, just in time for everybody to want to ask me about this situation. Catch up real quick. Because it wasn't just, so it was the DAO, but everybody knows about it because of the hack, right? Like how much 150 million or something disappeared, or I don't know. What were the details on the hack? It was big enough that it made headlines, right? I still talk to people in like government regulatory context that say things like, well, we all know what happened in the DAO. And I'm like, okay, that's where we are, I guess.
So there was a re-entrancy bug, which at the time wasn't something we were thinking about too much, the Ethereum community. But like programmers know of this issue, more hardcore programmers. Anyways, so this was taken advantage of, and it drained a lot of the funds. I don't know, Scott, can you talk a little more on it?
Yeah, so it drained like a third of the funds, and so they had raised $150 million in Ether, and then the price of Ether inflated, and so it ended up being like $250 million by the time the hack happened, and they successfully drained like a third of it, and then the white hat hackers like drained the rest or something, and then they ended up forking.
Yeah, so I walked as a fresh lawyer into the kerfuffle about like governance things. Like this blew up into a thing that was way bigger than just, hey, a hack happened, some money was taken, which kind of happens all the time, I feel like.
Maybe not $100 million, but
and there's still the hard fork was the solution that was chosen on some level. I mean, you still have Ethereum Classic, right? So it immediately gets into the weird space of like, so what happened because of this? Because some people were made whole again, right? Like in the real world, if this happens and you can fix it, there are systems for it. You could sue people, you can get your money back, be made whole for wrongdoing. It works differently in this context.
Yeah, and basically any chain has gone through these growing pains early on in their days. It's interesting to think like where the line is drawn. Like when do you decide that it's early enough, it's enough amount of money, it's enough people were affected, or like how does a community decide to roll back this thing that's supposed to be immutable? And then there's later times when we've had major hacks now, and and the community has decided to not roll back. And so it kind of seems like now, I don't think there will ever be one again, but you never know. And like, when does that line get crossed? If there was some like platform layer problem that burnt all the ether, would people decide to roll back a few blocks? I don't know. But anyways, that's like getting into our own language again. So what is a DAO? Decentralized autonomous organization. That word kind of means a lot of different things, and it doesn't fit all the use cases, because a lot of these organizations maybe aren't as decentralized or as autonomous, or maybe not even an organization. I don't know, but it's the word that's stuck, and so now it's part of our language, and that's what we use to describe any kind of group that gets together and uses block rules to help either enforce validity of transactional things, or to help build trust between people. There's there are a lot of different benefits to it, and that's just how the name is now stuck. Anyone else have their interpretation of what DAO means?
I feel like I talk about it a lot, so if anyone else wants to go first, but yeah, I mean, so I would say it's just it's the place where software hits like human coordination efforts. This is the way we talk about it a lot within DAOhaus, or I should say HausDAO. Like, and some of this is not new, right? As a lawyer, I come to this to some extent going, okay, so a corporation is a way to decentralize control of a value creation mechanism, but like it's only to the 8 people on the board and then maybe some shareholders, but you have that structure. A lot of the reason that everyone doesn't do that for everything is just because there's certain levels of just coordination overhead to everybody essentially talking amongst themselves to make a thing happen, especially if you think about like local politics, stuff like that. The common ledger blockchain allows you to do automatic voting, automatic money. Like, it makes things programmable in a really interesting way. The software that does it, like the entity run by that software is ultimately a DAO.
Yeah, you kind of have a scale of how autonomous a DAO can be.
Or how decentralized, but a roughly federated system got us all the way to the prosperity we see today in the United States. So, like, on some level, everything's a remix.
you could think about all the miners as being in a DAO, basically too. They all
like the
collaborate
system
together to make different decisions, and they a lot of it is through on-chain interactions, and so that's basically, the DAO was already around even with Bitcoin. A DAO,
right?
DAO. But,
so
now we're in the future, and we have all the DAOs. We've got multiple platforms, multiple kind of base contracts, the smart contracts that fuel these different DAOs. Like the DAOhaus DAOs, which are all based around the Moloch contract. Rage quit, all the different rage kind of things.
Yes, the memes get increasingly rich as you go down the funnel.
the Moloch's biggest claim to fame is great meme game, and even to the point where people have wrote it, it's nothing but this.
It's nothing but a meme game.
Yeah. And that it's a glorified multi-sig.
To which I would grumble about religion, but hear that.
Which I think those two things which people sometimes talk shit about is actually the most powerful things about the Moloch, is that it is a glorified multi-sig, and it does have sweet memes. And what does yours have? Rage quit. A lot of things with Moloch is like, based off of gaming terms, right? And then we've riffed on that too. And these are just like community things that start. You have these emerging things. These they're like inside jokes, right? That stick. And so rage quit is definitely one of those. Rage ship, rage kick. With all these things that are loosely based off of kind of a gaming idea. Rage quitting off of a gaming server or something, flipping the table over. The same idea with the DAO. You rage quit. You're basically like, I'm done. I'm out. See you later.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the way I usually say it is after the DAO happened, because it's all software. Like for us, that was a really expensive debugging experiment. But now everybody knows not to make that same mistake, and the security we can feel around that because code does its thing. What gives us sort of strict guide rails for things. Like everyone on this call feels confident that that's not going to happen again to some degree. It takes like just human level emotional confidence a few years to catch up. And so a few years down the road from the DAO, like people kept using software for that kind of stuff and they continued to apply it to stuff. Yeah. And so now we have things where like Metacartel and Moloch have given rise to the community that we are all a part of, which is just fun. But like I think the real thing, it comes down to like when you take out certain structural advantages, because software, like on some level, everything that software eats is going to trend to this sort of race to the bottom pricing anywhere that's relevant. And so now it's just about where the experiment's happening, and it's like, oh hey, okay, interesting. Of course, once the overhead for the tracking and the transactions and all that kind of stuff is reduced, people are like, well, I'd rather do a game. It's more fun. Like, and that's you guys have heard me talk about this in the context of Raid Guild. Like, there's no reason we can't do a kick-ass software dev agency and also a meme structure that's more fun to deal with than just talking about department heads.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
that's the whole thing, right?
I want to talk to another VP of digital strategy. What is that even? It's just made up. Let's make up something cooler.
Yeah. We don't want to take ourselves too seriously, and we want to keep it fun, right? It's even like in the core manifesto of Metacartel. It's like, good ship, have fun, And so these things build community. Like it can kind of build more of an in-group because people see it and they're like, what does rage ship or rage quit mean? But once you understand, then it actually strengthens that bond because you're like, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I'm part of the crew because I learned their language.
Well, especially at the bootstrapping phase, it's very collaborative. And so as we get into the specifics of what it looks like inside HausDAO, almost everything has this sort of provenance where somebody in the group can go, oh yeah, we had the mages and the blacksmiths, but we realized they were all working together, so they became the mage smiths. And it's like, okay,
yeah,
right
yeah.
on. Like you end up having a story of the creation of the community as well.
But isn't life really just an RPG? So
that's more or less.
We just have fun with it.
Talk to Peeth about that. So I think to back out,
these globally distributed, federated groups of people are able to create this hyper-local feel to their community.
Right.
And it's through all these different new technologies that people are using it on a day-to-day basis now, like communication technologies and the DAO and having a shared bank account and being able to pwn your coordination, participatory ownership.
Ownership?
Yeah, ownership. You start building this like new dynamic for community, which has been around, but now we're adding bank accounts to it, basically, and shared governance.
I joined late, so you guys might have covered this stuff already. But the concept of ownership and like the idea of shared ownership is super fascinating to me, and I think it's one of the I don't know, maybe it's not the most important, but it's probably one of the most important things about a Moloch DAO structure. Probably the most important. And the thing I think that's so cool about it is it's both shared ownership, and because of Rage Quit, it's individual ownership too. It's like a combination of the two things, which is just so cool and also incredibly powerful, because I think we all recognize the benefits of kind of shared decision making, as well as the benefits of individual control or sovereignty, and the ability to actually fit them together in a way that works is kind of mind blowing.
Yeah, the A in a Moloch DAO is for individual autonomy, right? Not necessarily the contract's not going to solve any problems autonomously for you. It still takes the community to make a decision. So there's a strong trust or social layer to that.
So I feel like maybe the place to back out, Moloch itself. Let's talk about the meme game for a second. Moloch itself is a controversial term. Do you want to address that really quickly? In terms of, it's called the Moloch DAO because we're trying to slay Moloch, the god of coordination failure, right?
Yeah. So there's an article, kind of a short essay called "Meditations on Moloch," which I guess it's not that short. It's kind of long, actually. Everyone should, if they get a chance. And it kind of goes into, the base Moloch coming from Howl, the poem, and then talking about, like, you have this idea of Moloch, even before that, coming from like this god of coordination failure, this god of baby sacrifice.
I actually have a thing to say about that, but keep going.
But yeah, so we want to defeat those problems, right? It's not like we're worshiping Moloch. We want to defeat Moloch, and so we build tools that help us coordinate better.
There's an aspect to that I didn't even think twice about, but then somebody else pointed out, and I went, okay, I can see where that would be, the killing the babies part. I always took it to be in the same sort of metaphorical or philosophical space as something that you learn when you work in a creative profession, screenwriting. Like, I have experience with screenwriting, directing, like that kind of stuff. And there's just a phrase, kill your darlings, kill your babies. There's all kinds of different versions about it, right? Like, part of moving forward as a team, trying to make a thing that's artistic and thus subjective in the end, you just have to be like, oh, I love that scene, but it kills the pacing, so we got to take it out. Damn it. And you talk about it for the rest of your life because you're like, fuck, I love that shot, but it didn't fit the story that's my main goal here, and we got to take it out. And they call that kill your darlings, kill your babies. Like, part of coordination failure is people being emotionally connected to the things that you have to go, yep, okay, we're not going to do my thing. Don't care.
That's like,
don't care.
I had never thought about it that way, but that's a really good one. We should do in our book club, we do this Federalist Paper book club. Anyways,
what happened?
We should do one on meditations on Moloch. One,
for sure.
Deep analysis on that would be fun.
So I would say, fundamentally, Moloch became a project to sort of do minimum viable DAO, I think. Sort of very, just start from the idea of like, okay, people say, well, a DAO is just a complicated multi-sig. Okay, fine. Because the real power of the DAO is ultimately like coordinating funds, I think. And, people don't always want to talk about it that way, but the reality of like trying to run a company is, it comes down to a long process for a community to decide how we spend our money to try to make more money or whatever, right? Try to meet the mission of the company if you're mission driven. So at the core is your guild bank, or
Right.
whatever you want to call it, right? Inventory, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, your backpack inventory.
Right.
When Moloch came out in ETH Denver 2 years ago, by Amin and James Young and the original core team there. DAOs, there were DAO frameworks already around, and they were all had their different flavors, and then came out this really simple one, a glorified multi-sig MVD, minimum viable DAO kind of thing. But the real innovative part was the rage quit, and it's a really simple idea, but it's like really powerful too. And basically, what it means is that when a proposal passes or goes through the rest of the community, and it may be to spend some of your money, there's a grace period where you can say, no, I voted no on this, and I am like so against this that I don't want to spend any money on this, so I'm going to take whatever my percentage of the funds are in the bank and leave. And just having that power to exit, it seems simple, but it was a new idea at the time. And really kind of a new idea in general. Is anyone else on?
Sorry.
Oh.
I had to step away for a second. Dropping the ball on host duties. Yeah, so rage quit. It really fundamentally shifts the way that the whole thing works. And that kind of gets to what Spencer was saying, earlier. There are weird parts that I think is what we're working on, which is like the idea of rage quitting to get your salary is an interesting thing. But like one of the things that's missed with rage quitting sometimes is you can rage quit like incrementally. If you have 1,000 shares, you can rage quit just one of them. But yeah, so you can always rage quit, just built in. Like, I'm a member of the DAO, I can't stop you from rage quitting, right?
Right. Unless you voted yes on a proposal, then you can't rage quit because you've basically
I can't. Yeah, so I can't vote to harm the DAO and then peace out.
Right.
That's easy to understand, I think. And so that's it. It's kind of like you have your bank account. You can submit proposals to take money out of that to work on stuff, and then people vote. It's kind of like in the DAOhaus structure, at least, we have shareholders and loot holders. You want to kind of break that one down?
Yeah, so shares and loots is a new thing that came out in Moloch v2, which was released in this year's, but almost a year ago, ETH Denver. So Moloch v1, it was only shares, it was single token, and like you said, if you wanted to claim a grant, like if you were awarded a grant, you actually had to rage quit. So it was a little weird because it was you were actually expected to rage quit at that point. So you're not so much raging; you're just doing what you're expected. And then Moloch v2 came out, which added the ability to make direct payments, so you wouldn't have to pay someone in shares. It added the multiple token support, so you could have as many tokens whitelisted for your DAO as you wanted. And it also added this idea of shares, which is basically just classes of shares. Both of the shares and loot have like a proportional representation to the bank of tokens. Shares has the ability to sponsor and vote on proposals, and loot does not have that ability, but both of them have the ability to rage quit. So loot, no voting.
So that also creates an interesting. You need rage quit to get there, but for the way that we've structured DAOhaus, there's an interesting thing at play, which is, from the standpoint of an investor, your whole game is, if you're an investor, if you're, I don't want to say investor because I don't want to make it sound like VCs, right? But because it's kind of the same dynamic as I just buy stock in companies. That's my investing. But so, if you're, it's just all about risk profiles for the people who do want to throw money around, whether those are donations at like $20 a month, and I want to know what you're doing with it, or, angel investors giving money to companies. There's an interesting dynamic where it's kind of like, okay, we're giving you $100,000 this round, but I'm not going to find out if it worked until $100,000 is gone. Within the DAO structure, because we're essentially pulling the funds out and they still can rage quit at any time as an investor, like my downside risk is decreased on a sort of fluid basis, because I can always piece out with, what I've got left. I can always stop the bleeding and move on, which please no one do that. But, it's a very different idea than just, I'm going to cut you a check for $100,000 and then kind of stand here and go, please build something good.
Yeah. Yeah, it is very fluid. I like how you said that. And that kind of goes into the idea of transmutation. The DAO take on a DAICO, which was proposed by Vitalik during the ICO boom, when we were seeing a lot of the kind of pop-up ICO projects, which had nothing but a white paper and a flashy web page. They'd raise several $1 million and then exit scam. So they would just, the devs, the small team of 3 or 4 people, which maybe weren't even devs, but more salespeople, and would just take the money and disappear. So the DAICO was a solution to that, where there would tap where the funds would be basically released to the dev team on a more milestone basis, or it could even be every second. But the person that had bought into it could at any time take some of their money back, put more money in, or and lower their risk in that way. And the dev team could decide to raise that, how fast that drip worked, a drip of funds, or they could so the investors or financial contributors, or whatever you want to call them, could basically watch the project and say, okay, this is still working. They're still doing something. They're not just going and buying Lambda. This is a real project. So I'm like, cool with my initial investment. I want to see what happens. And that's basically how transmutation works as well. As the DAO core developers are spending some of the money that financial contributors have made, that money is being replaced by a token. The milestones are all very public. The devs are showing that there's things going on, because the people that own these loot tokens, this is how the financial contributors have representation in the DAO, they still have some form of governance, because their governance is rage quit. And it's basically like, you didn't meet your milestone. I don't think this project is going in the right track. I'm going to hit the escape hatch and get out of here. And I'm taking my funds. And that's a really powerful signal to the devs and to the other contributors that there's something wrong. I mean, people can leave for whatever reason. Still, it doesn't have to be. It could be some family crisis or something that they need their funds back. But it also could be like, no, like, what's going on, and you could see all the funds drained out if there was a dev buying Lambos and then posting on Twitter or something.
Well, it's funny because it ends up solving, if you're an investor, for one of the things you worry about is necessarily transparency. Like, yeah, they might just leave and spend that money on something and you can't get it back without suing them before, like it's a disincentive for us as the team working on a project funded from a DAO, as a DAO, however you would say that. We have a built-in incentive to be transparent about what we're working on, so that people don't show up and literally say, I can't tell what you're up to and I don't like it, I'm out. Which, is a kind of signal that's very different to generate if you're just raising from angel investors or something. And then I guess a lot of this gets to also the fact of, trying to solve, we're building open source software. And so, part of this dynamic is flipped anyway, because we're not questing after intellectual property that ultimately, a corporation has control of. And so from a lot of different vectors, people are all sort of additionally motivated by all of this stuff to collaborate.
I think that's really cool is that in so many venues, people talk about accountability, and accountability is really important, obviously. But in so many venues, accountability is indirect. There's sort of a mechanism that has like 3 steps that actually implements the accountability. Like our legal system is very indirect in that way. Like if an investor says something, then the SEC can maybe investigate that. But in the case of rage quit and loot, or like in an investor context, it's not just a signal that they're sending. It is a signal to everybody else, but it also is like the accountability is direct. So if we as the product developers of something, if somebody rage quits their loot, then it's both a signal to everybody else, and as we've said, our funds get taken away. So it's the directness of the accountability that I think is novel.
So then I think the last piece to hit as we wind down here is our own sort of internal structure. Like, so we're using all these mechanisms. We just, we tried to explain. Hopefully it was effective. To run HausDAO. Somebody want to kind of give the rundown on, how we came to be where we are? I came in a little bit later, so I think you guys have some more context on the sort of Discord, I guess, is what we're talking about here. How everything came together, how we're organized to continue working. We still have to organize. We're a team working on a project. That's normal.
I think
right.
the history of DAOhaus is kind of the normal, or it's the same story for a lot of open source projects, right? And starts off as a passion project, and the devs are just doing it because they really like it, and then they get a community really of people that are interested in it. And I can't remember what I was recently reading, but they talk about how open source projects are. You have these different stages of where eventually it gets to the stadium effect, where you have a few core team members that are building it and working on it, and then you have a really large stadium of people that are using it, and the support and then the request for new features, and the fact that these people are actually depending on this product becomes a point where it's no longer feasible, or for a team to work on a small team to work on the project. And so the next phase really is to incorporate the stadium more into more inclusive into the community. And so you hear things like exit to community, or CCO, like community contribution offerings, fair launches, things like that, which is kind of a way to try to bring in that stadium into the community of everyone who's contributing. So you get more contributors. And really, that's like the long-term goal of DAOhaus. It started as a hackathon passion for a couple of us at Odyssey, and then we got some interest. We won some hackathons. We got some, and then it just continued to go to the point where it was like, okay, if we're and people want us to, then we should see if people really do want us to, and we should offer it more to the community. So we gave up ownership of it basically, and gave it to the community to run. And so this is an experiment, but we'll see how it goes. I remember when we were first talking about it, we brought it up to some of the Meta Cartel people, and they were just like, that's cool because you don't hear devs do that much. Basically giving up their project that has been their passion project, just giving it away, basically.
It's an interesting, like, I took a similar narrative on the road trying to raise money to work on something similar in the legal tech space. And it's interesting trying to explain it's not interesting. It's a terrible idea to get out there and use Red Hat and Linux as like this thing that's only ever worked once as your example for why your thing will work. You know, because VCs are just crunching numbers on that and going, yeah, but Linux, the number of people that I had say, yeah, but Linux only worked once to me in response to the fact of like saying, yeah, but it's about the community. This will be open source. Like, so there ends up being a very legit problem. That's where I've ended up in the legal tech space in my head, which is like there are legit public problems. Like, how do we do fair dispute resolution for a population that just aren't going to be funded by the places where you go and get money the normal way? And you know, the feeling inside of DAOhaus that we're building this thing for like anyone who wants to use it. And when people say, well, how do you guys make money? It's like, oh, there's this tiny little thing over in the corner, but really we're working on this thing. This is kind of like this public goods problem. We want DAOs to work better for people so they can go, you know, orchestrate their communities to plant more trees or whatever, you know. There's that inevitable public goods aspect. Anyway, different rabbit hole. So within DAOhaus, though, we've sort of organized like Raid Guild, where we've talked about before. So, you know, when people come to jump into what's going on in DAOhaus, we have our different camps where, you know, we've essentially made up names for the, you know, camps. That should we run down the camps real quick? I mean, I guess you hear them at the top of the hour if you were hanging out for the stream. Those are the camps. We have a main. So let's run through the DAO structure real quick. We have the main HausDAO, which holds all of the money that we got to work on the project from the community, sort of offering that you were just talking about. Right? That's on XDAI now?
Yeah, we moved everything to XDAI. Another experiment, because mainnet is just, it's become a place for different kinds of projects, ones that are very financial based, because it's become so expensive and congested. So we're trying it on XDAI, which is basically a side chain of Ethereum, and so far it's been awesome. It's amazing to be able to do things for basically free on the gas level. But yeah, we have those four. Then we have the 4 circles, right? Which we started off with the War Camp Circle, which was initially to decide how to do this. And then once we did it and it worked, we broke into 4 different circles that could kind of work in parallel, but on different paths. So the Rangers is marketing and community. Mage Smiths is design and development. Paladins is internal ops, and which one am I missing? Alchemist is tokenomics. So they're separate. There's some bleed over. They have different kind of parallel goals.
And then functionally, we're getting paid for our work. Transmutation means that there's house token, being generated, and we in a sense are earning that through the proof of contribution mechanism. But otherwise, you put up each of those. We have a sub DAO for each of those circles, and then each circle puts in a funding proposal for every month to the main DAO for their sort of like, hey, here's the work we did this month, and then the main DAO can vote it through or not based on the sort of accountability piece we talked about, and then within camps the individual team members get paid. I don't know if that's all as exciting, but all the things that need to happen for it to also feel like a job are happening in there. It's just a very interesting and sort of novel mechanism in that way.
Yeah, we're really dog fooding everything.
For sure.
Dog food on the dog food.
But I feel like that hits everything in terms of we're getting to an hour, but that felt like a great kind of, rundown. Really what I'm after is just, like what's the primer for people that if they want to jump in, like we talked about at the top, and, be part of HausDAO, there are a lot of routes in, can help us build the platform.
Basically
to make DAOs work for other people.
Basically, in each of those circles, we can use some help. And so if that's interesting to anyone, then we'll start getting some ways to get more contributions.
At the least, like and subscribe. Hang out for the next house party. But otherwise, check out the description. There'll be links to stuff that we talked about.
We didn't really get to open it up to questions, but maybe next time we have a more just...
Yeah, I mean, if people have stuff, I'm good to stick around for a little bit, but I like to give people the dump out at the hour if they need to take off. Also, if there's no questions, then we're good.
All right.
Awesome.
Let's put the outro music on.
Yeah, let me see if I can do that. I didn't really think about the way out. I can probably do that though. We at least faded back to the timer, so let me.
We can